What did you discover about Y&T that you didn't know before you joined them? Like when you joined them, like what did you learn about this band that you didn't know as an outside fan?
Wow, quite a few things. I'd say first off, right out of the gates, just in my audition playing together, just how good they are. They're a really, really good band, really good bunch of musicians, and you know how it is when you start playing with other people and how you interact and how it grooves, and you know just incredible. And then what a great singer Dave Minichetti is. The guy's incredible. Night after night after night, he's always spot on and sounds better than he did when he was 18 years old. And yeah, and what a bunch of nice guys they are, and how fun it is to be in a band like that, because I've been in a lot of those bands. A lot of my friends are in those bands where you hear the horror stories. They meet on stage and they go their own way every night, and yeah, we all hang together, and after a good 10, 12-hour drive sometimes, we pull up to the hotel and it's like, all right, where you guys want to go for dinner now? You know, we all hang together. That's really cool.
And then one thing I'm always curious about with guys who join an existing band is how do you honor what came before in terms of the drummers who sat in that throne before, but also make space to express yourself and you know, show off what you have to offer.
Right. Well, good question. First thing I do is I learn everything the way it was done originally, as in whether I have to chart something out or just learn it really well so I can sound like the record first and foremost. And then as you get to know them, they'll let you know where you have freedom to play other parts. We stretch out a lot of things, but you know, as a kid coming up, any band I was into, you go to a concert, you want to hear the stuff played the way we knew it. So those are the key parts, the sound you want it to be. And especially today, most of the older bands are recreating their songs the way they were. So we're really aware of that, but we have a lot of places where we stretch out, and I can't help but sound like myself, so it's not going to be quite the same, but I try and honor what Leonard did mostly, and then Jimmy DeGrasso was in the band, and Steve Smith on a couple of the songs, and things like that. But yeah, just by really listening and educating myself on the stuff to get up on it. But yeah.
And how long did it take before you started I don't know, adding a little bit more of your own flavor into things?
Yeah, well, pretty much right away, because they were saying that they wanted some of that, but they wanted to honor the old sound, or you know, the sound of the band. I wouldn't say the old sound. You know, it's kind of like Charlie Watts and the Stones. You know, Leonard made that sound, so I got to cop that feel. So the first thing I did was like, okay, who's Leonard into? Ian Pace, John Bonham, you know, and all that. So I'd, you know, go back, do my homework again, even though I was into those guys, you know, extensively. I would go back and do my homework and really brush up on that. And yeah, it's mostly when we were playing live, beginnings, endings, and I get a lot of freedom into stretching out sections and endings, and that became that. And actually Phil, our, you know, the original bass player, when he was alive, he would tell me, you know, actually when I wrote the song, I had this idea and I wanted this. So we were already changing stuff as we went that wasn't like the record anyways, right when I got in the band. So yeah, it's hard to remember. That was so long ago now. Yeah, but it just kind of evolves, you know.
And then a lot of what you do is in support of guitar solos, because this band has some iconic guitar solos. And not just with this band, because you know you've done work with the Steve Lukather I read about, you know, amazing guitarist and everything. So obviously you're a drummer guitarist are very comfortable with. But that brings up the question: okay, what's the key to playing under a guitar solo?
That's funny you mention that. I was talking about this with somebody else. My career started basically around Mike Varney, who's known for getting guitar players and guitar player bands together. I got recommended to play on a record that somebody else was on and couldn't finish, and it was featuring Michael Lee Firkins, guitar virtuoso out of Omaha, Nebraska, who moved to the Bay Area where I live, and I played on 3 of his records. And I was recommended to Brian Wheat from Tesla for Soul Motor, which meant backing up Tommy McClendon. And for some reason, I was always working with these great guitar players, like you said. And so I kind of became known as this guy who was like backing up guitar players, you know. So, and here I am with Dave now, you know. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of others on my resume. You see a lot of guitar players I work with. But yeah, I would say I've always played R&B and soul and jazz, and I was a trumpet player most of my childhood, second grade, senior in high school, while I was playing drums. So I know how it works as a band and who to listen to. So just be aware of backing up a solo and the expression of where they're going with it. You know, rock and roll is more of a planned out part of a song, but at home I'm playing with a lot of blues guys and stuff where we'll show up without any rehearsal and just work off each other. So you just got to have big, huge ears and you know, play with some dynamics. You know, you feel them going a certain way, just kick them in the butt, be that support system, you know. Yeah, and and a lot of what I got from the Beatles and Alex Van Halen, give them a lot of that fire extinguisher sound out of your ride cymbal. Guitar players love that wash, you know. You know, and you know,
right.
Just listening. You know?
Okay, because that's the thing. It's like, you know, when I was listening, you know, to the live album over again, because you're not just like some human metronome. You know, there's colors, there's shades to what you're doing, and yet you're staying out of the way, which you know, I don't think gets talked about enough or gets enough credit, because I think it's a hell of a thing to have to back up a guitar solo.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you noticed that. That comes probably from. Like I said, I played a lot of R&B and soul, and played with a lot of dance bands coming up and stuff like that to make money. So it was always about, and even recording, just staying out of the way of the vocal and things like that, and just be a support for the song and the vocalist. And I still do that in the studio all the time. You just want to stay out of the way of that vocal and you know, make the hook come out. And when you get your chance to do that one fill, you know, learned that from all my favorite players. But same thing back in the solo. They're just telling a story with this instead of this, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's one of the more challenging Y&T songs to perform live?
Wow. Let's see. Good question. There's so many of them. Yeah, we've recently gone back to, this is the 30th anniversary of the 10 record, and Jimmy DeGrasso played on that as well as Steve Smith. So both those guys put a lot into that one. So we're playing stuff like Hard Times, which had some killer drum fills in the middle of that, and you know, all the parts to figure out. You know, those are challenging. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There's so many songs, but yeah, a lot of the faster ones, like we do, like Blind Patriot, On with the Show, and but especially those 10 songs, playing all the chops and stuff. And then they've got me, as about 10 or 12 years ago, they got me singing too. And I was never a singer in a band, but we were all driving in the car one time, and Phil would hear me sing along with the radio like they were. And then one day he goes, "Oh man, it stuck a mic in front of me." So learning how to sing, and I sing most of the high parts with Dave. So learning how to breathe and do that while I'm going crazy like that, you know, that makes a whole nother realm of challenge. So a lot of those same songs I mentioned, I'm singing a lot of high, long notes on too. So just the training of breathing while I'm going crazy. The drumming comes easy. This is right. I never thought I'd be a singer, so that had to work out. Yeah.
But well, that brings up another thing, because as far as I know, a lot of these original drum parts were not. It was not intended for the drummer to be singing while playing these. You know, it's not like a Don Henley who created these parts knowing I'm going to be singing while I'm playing these, and so he designed the drum parts accordingly. You know, how did you adapt to, like, all right, this might be a little complex to do while trying to hold a chorus?
Yeah, there's a few things where I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Yeah, and one of us will switch parts or something. But Dave's really a really good singer, obviously. So he really listens to us and our parts, and we all practice our vocals together. Oh, you sound best on that. You sound best on that. But I had to work it out, just like, you know, patting your head and rubbing your stomach. You know, there's a couple parts where, especially if it sounds like, if I have to sing something rhythmic, you just work it in as one of the other rhythms. But it's the holding the long notes while doing something rhythmic, you know, then coming out of that seems to be more of a challenge for me. But yeah, you just work it out like another limb to the drums, you know. Like it's hard to explain, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Steve Smith, who I know has become a mentor of yours. Steve Smith, best known for his work with Journey, amazing drummer. I'm curious, with your work with him, what's one thing that you've really, you know, are doing differently because of your work with Steve Smith?
Wow, he was really. I really learned a lot about discipline of playing and practicing. But I would say the most what I apply, especially beating myself up out on the road. We were talking about that on the drive over here, but you know, that just my limbs and the physical things your body goes through, the motions. I was fortunate enough to study with him while he was studying with Freddie Gruber, who's a great mentor teacher to everybody, who was a roommate of Buddy Rich's and really understood the ergonomics of drumming and how to keep your own body out of the way of itself. So Steve's very aware of that, and we would sit there and just work through motions and things like that. And especially now that I see him back in Journey and he's playing harder than he has for a long time, and he wants to keep his jazz career going, he's very conscious of everything he's doing. It is funny because he'll send me videos of everything he's playing, and I catch him playing this stuff left-handed. He goes, "Oh yeah, just in case." He had a bone spur problem in his left thumb from playing traditional grip and practicing 4 or 5 hours a day.
Oh my God.
And then later he told me, he said, "Yeah, I figured out that after 2 or 3 hours, you've gotten the most you can out of practice every day." And I'm like, wow, I haven't even thought about coming close to that. Right. So what he did was he just in case started having problems, learned how to play every Journey song, including all the finesse and grace notes, left-handed. Like Simon Phillips would.
Okay.
I'm like, wow, you got a lot of time.
Yeah, it's like forcing himself to become ambidextrous.
Yes, just in case. And you know, yeah, just things like, you know, that, and just really watch the way he plays and body motions and things like that. I really became aware of when I was studying with him, and I still think of today. And singing too. I had this conversation with him because I started noticing I was getting some pain here from my ride cymbal. And I realize it's from when I'm singing, I'm straining, you know, so I got to put my mic in just the right position and make sure I'm relaxed this way and I breathe right and because just every little thing you do, it's like you do it on a regular basis, it starts to, you know, take a
wear
toll.
and tear. Yeah.
So.
And then, incidentally, if you want to know more about Freddie Gruber, just get a taste. Watch the Rush documentary, Beyond the Lighted Stage. There's a section there called the Yoda of Drums. And it was Steve who introduced Neil Peart to Freddie Gruber. And, well, that makes me wonder, because a lot of this stuff, which I've heard about from my work with Daniel Glass, check him out too, who also studied with Freddie, is just, it's about letting gravity do a lot of the work. And it's, you know, was that a difficult thing? Because, you know, most, you know, especially rock drummers are all about just beating the crap out of the, you know, and hitting as hard as possible. But this is about relaxing more. Was that a difficult transition for you to make?
Not at all. It's funny you say that. I've always been pretty good at technique because I was one of those guys with my VCR, you know, watching Steve Gadd and Dave Weckl and Vinny Colaiuta and rewinding in slow motion, trying to figure out what they were doing. But I was always watching what they were doing and how they got around the drums and how everything was close and ergonomic like that. So I get accused of looking like I'm bored on stage a lot, or looking like, wow, you're barely playing, but all the sound's coming out. But the drummers and the musicians think it's really cool. But the rock guys think you're supposed to be, right. You know, if I was in that kind of band, if I was in Motorhead or something, it'd be something. But Dave's like, no, we love the way you play. That's what we want. We're not one of those kind of bands, you know. So everything to me is down here, and it's just like, what I learned with Steve and like Freddie's things is a lot like the Moeller technique. It's all motions and getting 2 or 3 hits for every motion you make, and so things are easier and things are faster, and I apply that even if I'm just keeping time, you know, it's that kind of thing. So, and you can get a lot of sound out. I use clear ambassadors and lighter sticks and lighter cymbals, and I really don't ever break anything. I think me and my tech are like, well, we sign our heads and sell them at the merch booth and stuff. There's not any dents or anything. We're on like the 10th show of this tour. He's like, should we change them yet? No, they still look good. And it's like they'll stay on there for a long time. But yeah, it's if I'm answering the question, it's just applying that to the playing. But I still get a lot of sound. I can play loud. I purposely do some of this, twirl the sticks a little. You know, I'm having fun though.
And then also, you know, especially if you watch film of your solos, you have some, you know, insane footwork with the double bass pedal going on. I mean, I've seen competitors in the Tour de France who do not use their legs as much as you use, you know, and it seems like you can just keep going forever and ever. And I'm wondering, you know, first off, is part of that instruction from Steve is what made it easy to go so long, just keeping that bass going. And then also, what was your impetus to really explore using 2 bass pedals?
Wow. I've been into it for a long time, back when you used to haul around two actual bass drums to the gigs to try and do that. Yeah. And then I got the very first version that DW had, which wasn't the first double bass pedal, but I had their first one with the angled arm and everything. But yeah, I've been into it for a long time, but it comes from listening to like Billy Cobham and Simon Phillips, and Terry Bozzio did a lot of cool stuff with it, and but going all the way back to Louis Bellson and starting from square one to see what they did and how they applied it, and but yeah, and then working your way all the way up to the modern guys, seeing what they do with them, and always trying to stay up with those things, but the Colin Bailey bass drum control book, going through it left-footed or left-footed lead and things like that, and playing in bands where you get to play, the Billy Cobham tunes and Quadrant 4 and stuff like that. And then I played in a band where we did a version of Jeff Beck Space Boogie, with Simon Phillips, which is the same beat but in 7, and it's like, that kind of stuff is fun. But yeah, just soloing and working out. I think it's just from doing it a lot, But I don't sit there and just spend all day playing double bass beats. There's a time and a place where you get to solo and stretch out with it. But
yeah, and then speaking of the solos, what I found is interesting. If you go to Mike's website, there's 4 videos in particular that are up there of him soloing, and what I found fascinating is they all have a different feel. It's like they're solos, but they're like whole different songs. So there's the samba one, there's this one, and so I'm wondering, what is your process for writing or creating a solo?
I just try and find something musical, so the listener has something to follow. It's so much, such a better, just like a trumpet player would solo in a big band over a chord change. My favorite, and we got to do it in Y&T when I first got in, is soloing over a Vamp. It's so much more interesting where the band is playing a riff, even if it's just giving you drum breaks in the song. That way the audience has something to follow. So when you get a Vamp like that, you can really stretch out and play like polyrhythms and play with the time and different times, overtimes, and it's like, but it really creates this tension and release thing that's more fun. So that's my favorite kind. And that makes it easier to create melodies and different colors over and things like that. But if I have to solo by myself, which really came more in Y&T, I would create something like, I could play a samba and everybody will feel the time going. And, samba's always been a great dance thing to solo over. So things like that. Just, I like to have a format, something for the audience to follow.
And then you kind of touched upon this. You hit really hard, or at least it comes across.
Yeah.
You're playing as hard and loud, and it fits, of course, with the music you're doing. But what I find is interesting is, and I've seen other interviews you've done, you're a pretty soft-spoken kind of guy. And so it's funny that you have these 2 diametrically opposed voices. And I'm curious, would you say you are like a different personality when you're behind the kit?
I don't know, everybody says I talk really loud, and it's like they don't want a room next to me because they get hear every time I'm on the phone or something like that. I don't know. No, I play with good technique, and like I said, I use thinner heads, so I know how to get the sound out of the drums, but I can also play really soft with like great technique too. So yeah, it's just that dynamic range, but I wouldn't say it's a different personality. I think I've always said people play whatever instrument it is, people play like their personality, so you put yourself, the goal is to try and get inside the music. So obviously in Y&T, that's the kind of music we're playing, hang 'em high, forever, so you got to get that sound and sound like you're aggressive, But I'm using, a 24 and bigger cymbal stuff on this, so things are going to sound a little more aggressive, but if I'm playing in a little jazz fusion band, it's going to be a different story, It's going to be, tasty. So, not that this isn't tasty, you know what I mean?
No, a different flavor.
There you go.
Yeah. And then, speaking of playing different kinds of material, looking through your discography, your history, another thing I found fascinating. So as we said, you just played with Steve Lukather, Y&T, but you've also backed up John Denver, which is so far different. But it speaks to, it's like, wow, this guy can play with such a varied forms of musicians. And I'm like, what's the key to being so adaptable that you can play with someone, Dave Manichetti and John Denver?
Yeah, well, be a musician, be able to play music. I don't know, people are like, I'm a rock drummer, I'm a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
And it's like, it still gets it today. It's like, I do a lot of sessions online where guys, send me tracks. I know Pro Tools really well. I've always been an engineer. So it's really funny that it's hard to get the guys who play other kind of music to send you stuff, or the R&B guys have no idea that I'm in this band called Y&T or things like that. I play a lot of country, but that just boggles my mind, because you play an instrument, you should be playing music, period, right? You should be able to play anything.
Yeah.
And to me, it's fun. It's like, when I'm off the road with Y&T, I like to go play a blues gig, or I like to play some, R&B and things like that. So I just try and immerse myself in this style of music and be authentic at it,
Okay.
that kind of thing. But the John Denver thing, that came out of I used to play at Pebble Beach, the golf place, and we used to play or it's like the AT&T Classic or whatever it's called now.
Right.
So all these celebrities
Pro-Am.
would come in, and we'd be playing, and John Denver comes up, and we played a whole set with him. We had to learn his stuff and do all that. And what a blast, man! Who knew? And it's like, and you're playing and you're listening. It's like, wow, we used to watch his TV specials with my parents when I was a kid. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, but those things just, and thank God I could play different styles and knew the material just from absorbing what it was when I was a kid. So,
Right.
So we sounded authentic,
But I also think it's cool because it does show an open-mindedness, because sometimes you get into let's say discussions with people about music, and some who love hard rock think that that's it. And it's funny because I've met many musicians like you where it's the guys in the band are so much more open-minded about things, like no, I love this and I love that, and it's all good. It's all good. And so it sounds like, your advice, for people coming up is just play everything and anything.
Definitely. Yeah. And Y&T especially too. That's what's great about the band. It's pretty diverse for a hard rock band. You know? We play a little everything in there, and you got to have the influence of it. Yeah. And if you only knew, like when we're driving around, Dave and I, we love like Robin Ford, and we're listening like Tony Williams Lifetime and Alan Holdsworth on guitar, and we like the smooth jazz. Then we'll listen to like the guys we all love, like, the old Motown and soul and stuff. And it's like any kind of music. I don't care what you like. If you listen to Motown and everything, you'll learn how to play a song, and all the guys who played on that stuff. And, we listen to everything when we drive around. So,
Yeah. All right.
yeah.
And then, I read you also do teaching.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always curious with people who teach, what have you gotten out of the experience of teaching?
Wow. Well, it's really rewarding for, especially now I'm teaching mostly advanced or older people. So you get these people who are really good, and it's fun to watch them just grow and see what they can do. So it's rewarding when they become something and do something with it. And they just, even if that's not going to be what they do for a living, just the joy of what they discover, But for my own personal playing, I'm revisiting the basics all the time and going over my things. Or I see somebody with going through something, and I have to figure out a way to teach them to get past their trouble that they're having, or some sort of blockage or something like that. So it's really a challenge to come up with something or a new exercise, and maybe immediately on the spot have to change it a little for them, or do something like that, which I pride myself on teaching, because I think I'm really good at breaking down what I can do, and I think that helps. I got that from Steve Smith a lot too, because he studies everything he does, and it's all very planned out, And so when you can break down your own studies, if I may, and pass it on and try and communicate that to a way where you can lift somebody else up, that's the most rewarding thing about it. Yeah.
And one thing I'm fascinated with, because I know you, in addition to teaching in person, you teach over the internet via, Skype or something like that.
Some.
And I'm curious, how have you found the best way to work that, to, express or give direction to someone who's not only not in the room, but,
To tell you the truth, I haven't done a lot of that, because that's been really hard, and you have to get the timing right, especially if they're in another country. But I've done a little of it. But if I was playing a different instrument, it'd be easier to do. But drums is like, okay, stop, because they can't hear what I'm doing, so you
Yeah.
have to stop. Okay, watch me, and then do that. Okay, you do it, but you can't really play at the same time because of the delay. You don't get any of that, but you can still pass on the information and watch them and help them. It's kind of like there was a period of time where people would like video themselves and send you it for critique, and then you video back and you did. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that, except it happens right away,
Okay.
that kind of thing. But
Right.
yeah, nothing's like being in the same room, hands-on, where somebody could really show you, though. I'll tell you that.
And out of curiosity, the stuff you do with Steve, is that usually in person?
Oh, it always was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, tell you the truth, sometimes I'll call him up and I'll go, hey, I saw you do this or work on this or write him or something.
Yeah.
And like he just there's this song he did with this Indian passage. He's way into studying Indian rhythms and things like that, and the conical language and all that stuff. So he wrote an email and he'll say, okay, the ones are here and the E's are here and the parentheses mean this. And he tries to create this language on an email. And it's like he'll write this thing out and just trying to decipher this code, There's that kind of stuff. And he's actually sat there and made me a video or two sometimes where he'll count it out and play it for me, which is just faster and easier. But yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of fun to see that stuff. I know, I'm still like, when I was a kid, I'd be like, oh, pinch me, wow,
Right.
Yeah. But he's been a great, he does this with a lot of his, drum students and tries to help them and, just pass it on.
Yeah. And then has it caused you to explore other things even more? And do you then incorporate that into, say, a Y&T performance?
The first part, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
The Y&T performance, you kind of got to stick within the foundation of the thing. If there's a place where we can stretch out and do something, but definitely the physical parts and the styles of playing in the rock genre, yes, I apply that. But in terms of learning, how to count things different, or the vocabulary, the stuff he's getting from the Indian, things like that. It's like, instead of counting things, in the 1 E into 2 E into 3 or whatever, your triplets, 1 triple, 2 triple, 3 triple.
Yeah.
If you learn the syllables the way the Indian people do, it makes sense because they have different phrasing, which I won't even attempt to tell you right now because I'm nowhere near it. But they have different syllables and things for the phrasings they play,
Okay.
which makes sense. And I'm a believer in, if you can sing it, you can play it,
Oh, wow.
And you should learn how to count your things out loud because it's so much faster to learn. Write it out, so much faster to learn. It really helps in the communication of music,
Okay.
So I'm
All
way
right.
into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And all right, so that takes care of all my stuff. I'm always curious, though, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about? Because people always ask you about drumming. Is there anything that you wish people would ask you about that, they never
Wow,
really do?
that's a tough one. Yeah, we get asked a lot. A lot of my students come to me and they say, in this music world, I'm in a band, we write songs, and how do I make it? What do I do? Because we were just talking about this earlier. There is no platform anymore to make money selling songs, which is just boggles my mind, But there is. I see some creative people doing it. You see new bands coming out. So just hang in there, put your heart into it as much as you can. You got to love what you're doing. If you got to ask yourself if this was what you should do for a living, it's not for you. But you see guys doing this all the time, coming out of nowhere, new bands and things like that. And, it's not all about, I'm a winner on American Idol, I now have a career, Most of those people disappear after a while. But
Yeah.
But the studio scene we knew when we were young, we would get together with a songwriter and we'd play 6 guys in a room, make a record company picks it up and it gets on the radio. Those days don't exist now. So you got to figure out how to be smart and come up with a creative way to get a following on YouTube and those kind of things. And there is a market for it, and I'm sure things will change and laws are changing a little bit to help the music scene that way. And that, you're not going to get rid of music. It's too powerful a thing, and I don't care what the media keeps shoving down our throats. Kids are finding the cool stuff we grew up on online, and it's just there. And so yeah, just to tell the next generation, just hang in there and search for the stuff and find a way. It'll be there if you want it bad enough.
And I would also add, make sure you have the live chops, because that is the one way that people, musicians are making a living now. And there's a lot of guys who, yes, you're fantastic when you practice in your bedroom, but you know,
Oh,
can
yeah.
you get out there in a live setting
Yeah.
and work with guys? And you know, when things change and you know a mic goes out, or you know, can you handle that?
Yeah, there's a whole generation of, especially drummers, who can make their living by videos and demonstrating their chops and everything. But even not making a living anymore, there's all this education stuff out there. Guys just blowing chops and calling themselves teachers, but it's more like, look at me, look what I can do. And that's all great and everything, but get together with as many people as you can, especially for drummers. Play with bass players, play with guitar players, everybody. Play with other people as much as you can. Take every single gig you can and find your niche and learn how to play with others, you know, because nobody's gonna hire you if you can't back up people and be what they want and be able to support them.